Well, good evening and welcome. I'm Susan Engel, and I have the privilege of being the executive producer of 92nd Street Y Talks. Our fall season is soon to launch, and I invite you to visit our website, 92y.org, so you can be the first to know what's new at 92nd Street Y. I'm now delighted to welcome you to tonight's very timely conversation with special guests, House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi, thank you, and MSNBC's political analyst, Joy Ann Reid. As a community center, your participation in tonight's dialogue is important to us. Please write your questions on the cards that the ushers have handed out and pass them to our ushers when they come down the aisle to collect them. Now for our guests. Our moderator, Joy Ann Reid, is, as we all know, a political analyst for MSNBC and host of AM Joy, which airs on Saturdays and Sundays from 10 a.m. to noon. She is also the author of the book entitled Fracture: Barack Obama, the Clintons, and the Racial Divide, and co-editor of We Are the Change We Seek, the speeches of Barack Obama. In addition, she is a columnist at the Daily Beast. Our special guest this evening, Democratic Leader of the House of Representatives in the 115th Congress, Nancy Pelosi. Just to give you some background, although the full bio is in your program, from 2007 to 2011, she served as the first woman Speaker of the House, and that makes her the highest-ranking woman in government ever. And she has led House Democrats for more than 14 years and has represented San Francisco, California's 12th district for 30 years. Her legislative accomplishments include having led the Congress in health insurance reform, key investments in college aid, clean energy and innovation, and initiatives to help small businesses and veterans. She is also very proud to be the mother of 5 and a grandmother of 9, and is married to Paul Pelosi, who is with us this evening. So without further ado, please give a very another warm 92nd Street Y welcome to Leader Nancy Pelosi.
Well, there are a lot of you out there. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank Susan and the entire staff and leadership of the 92nd Street Y. Isn't this a wonderful institution? I think they deserve a round of applause. And of course, thank you, Leader Pelosi, for coming down and doing this. I have to start by asking you, where did you acquire your power to swing and direct every election in the United States? Where did this power come from? And can you use it to get me the winning lottery ticket? But well, in all seriousness, I want to before we get into some of because maybe you're not going to tell me where you got that power, because it's true, I may not use it for good. I want to talk a little bit about you. Tell me a little bit about your background, because you are so associated with San Francisco, but in reality, you're a Baltimore girl.
Well, both. Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to join you in thanking everyone at the 92nd Street Y. It's always wonderful to be here. Tonight on a Sunday evening, it's sort of we're in each other's living room. I'm happy that my husband Paul is here, my daughter Alexandra, her husband Mahil, and my grandchildren Thomas and Paul, because this is about the future. I'm so proud to be here. I was so excited to be coming, and especially since we're right in the heart of a fight on the Affordable Care Act. But Joy says we'll get to that shortly. And I'm particularly honored to be here with Joy. Aren't we proud of her? Aren't we proud of her?
Oh, thank you.
You too. Thank you, Joy. And we love all of you. Very quickly, because I know we want to hear from the audience pretty soon, I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. When I was born, my father was a member of Congress from Maryland in the Congress of the United States. He was a New Dealer. He went in, well, before I was born, but he went in and was an avid supporter of Franklin Roosevelt, worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. Anyway, I tell you that because this is one thing that many people don't know. When I became Speaker, I went to Israel for the first time as Speaker. I had been there many times. And they wrote this big article in the paper there about Nancy Pelosi comes by her support for Israel naturally. And they talked about my father when he was a New Deal congressman, again, before I was born, and then I was born while he was there, that he, again, worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. But he had two areas of disagreement, and they point out that that could have been a problem for him in his relationship with the president. One was he disagreed with the president on the treatment of how our country was dealing with the treatment of Jews in Europe. He was saying we should be doing more, and the other was that he wanted our country to more vocally and sooner support the establishment of a Jewish state in Palestine. He was part of a group called the Berkson Group, and they did rallies and pageants and parades. And when we stood up on the floor of Congress, I stand here as a representative of the members of the Jewish army. I mean, he was really way out there on all of it. And he was a great orator. He couldn't read a speech to save his life. I mean, that would be like, what? But he could orate, and so he was in demand to do those things. So it was in that spirit of, if you believe in something, you must act upon your beliefs, and you have to take risks to do it, even to possibly weaken your relationship with the President of the United States. So he was born then when I was in first grade, he became the mayor of Baltimore. When I went away to college, in my whole first year of college, he was still the mayor of Baltimore. So that was what I grew up, that 12 years in a home that was always about our responsibilities to other people. When I was born, I would say I was born into a family that was devoutly Catholic, fiercely patriotic, deeply proud of our Italian-American heritage, and staunchly democratic. And we saw the relationship between our faith and our responsibilities and a responsibility to community in that way. Growing up, I read things that say I always wanted to be in politics. I never wanted to be in politics. I just wanted to be a 50s teenager, you know, rock around the clock, the whole thing. Elvis, oh my God. So, but then I went to Trinity College in Washington, and Paul Pelosi was at Georgetown. We met and married. He was born and raised in San Francisco. We moved to New York. My New York bona fides, 4 of our 5 children were born at New York Lying In Hospital here in New York. And when the oldest of the 4 was 4, and we had 4 children, we moved home for Paul to, that would be his home in San Francisco. And that was a long time ago. And San Francisco is where Alexandra was born. She's the only one who lives in New York. And but the others are in Texas, Arizona, you know, they're all over. But I prayed for grandchildren, but I forgot to pray that they lived down the street. But nonetheless, we're very proud to have them. And by the way, proud mom, Alexandra's having one of her 11th documentary on the documents of our country, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, coming out on HBO on 4th of July. So I'm very proud of that. So
you came into Congress in 1987, and so you have experienced, let's just say, the relationships in Congress that people sort of have a big nostalgia. There's a lot of claims that what is broken down in Congress in terms of the comity between Democrats and Republicans wasn't like that before, that, at the time that you came into Congress, there was a lot more communication. Is that true, or are we mythologizing politics in a way that this sort of makes us feel better, but this isn't accurate?
Both. The thing is of course we had a little better rapport then, there's no question. The politics of personal destruction really began with Newt Gingrich in the 90s against the Clintons, and that sort of took us to down a different path. And as you know, I'm the victim of all of that as well. But apart from that, in the history of our country, and that's why I was proud of what Alexandra was doing, the history of our country since the beginning, our founders, they wrote this beautiful Constitution where they have the preamble, all the possibilities of our country, and how it is done by a system of checks and balances, separation of powers. And that's really the heart of what I'm concerned, part of what I'm concerned about, what's happening now. So then it was a spectrum. Up until the last dozen years, it was a spectrum where you were in terms of the role of government. More government, less government, more national government, more local government. And that was the debate you had. And you went to Congress confident in your views, humble enough to listen to other people, wanting to find common ground so that you could have sustainability in your solutions. But we had a range where we could find common ground. Now, you could have all the comedy in the world. You could laugh at each other's jokes and have dinner together and the rest, but the fact is that the policies that they are advocating do not even come close to meeting the needs of the American people. And so we have a drastic debate. That doesn't mean that we're not courteous to each other, nice to each other and that, but that doesn't mean that that's going to change anybody's mind about their constant call to their North Star, trickle-down economics, tax cuts for the rich so that you can have, and if it trickles down, that would be good. If it doesn't, so be it. That's the free market. At the same time, we can't let the deficit grow, so we've got to reduce the deficit, and you see a budget that should be a statement of our national values. What's important to us as a country should be how we allocate our resources, and you have a budget that the president put forth that cuts 1/5 of the National Institutes of Health, $7 billion. 30% of our State Department budget, our soft power, our cooperation with other countries and the rest, and the list goes on. Talk about infrastructure, cut the transportation budget, the list goes on and on. And when you see the health care bill, which we will get to, hopefully more fully, the health care bill, which is the biggest transfer of wealth in the history of our country, in the House bill, which even the president calls mean, sucks up $600 billion from working families to the wealthiest families in our country and corporate America. So how could that be right? We are taking away opportunity and benefits for people using the money for tax cuts, which have only increases the deficit, does not create jobs, and then calls them to say, we've got to cut food stamps and we've got to cut all of the investments in the future. Education, innovation begins in the classroom. You cut education, how are we going to be number one? And by the way, and I'll end with this for this question, nothing brings more money to the Treasury, does more to reduce the deficit than investments in education. Early childhood, K through 12, higher education, post-grad, lifetime learning. That is how you reduce the deficit. You have to have good paying jobs, and of course that's the fight that we are in. We have to